Israeli government is out of control. We saw and heard from the words of Smodrich last week, the finance minister, a very clear mission statement to clear out all the Palestinians from Gaza. What is happening now is militarily inexplicable to most people I've spoken to in the military. Nobody understands what Israel's goal is here, other than flattening Gaza and kicking off. Hang on, as Smodrich has said, it is to take over and clear out Gaza of all the Palestinians. That is genocide.
Israel's war aims have been clear from the outset, which is the destruction of Hamas.
They haven't done
and the
that.
return of the hostages.
All you're doing is killing more and more civilians, and you've been starving them. The people are alleging that Israel's committing war crimes are two former Israeli prime ministers.
Who have their own political agendas here, let's be
clear.
How
convenient. The two former prime ministers of the country have said that the government is committing war crimes, and you dismiss it as just a bit of internal politics.
I'm here as a lawyer.
The Israeli government, and you're here to defend it, right?
No, I'm here to defend the rule of law.
On the point of legality, only last week the Israeli government announced new settlements, 22 settlements.
Well, no, can we pause?
Well, hang on.
Yes.
On the West Bank, 22 settlements, which the international community views as illegal. They announced 22 new settlements. As a lawyer, given your adherence to the point of law, presumably you would condemn that.
Well, this is exactly why we need to be clear about how international law applies and why the notion of these so-called illegal settlements is a misnomer.
You don't think they are?
It's not a legal term, it's a political term, and it is part and parcel of a misapplication of international law to the status of a territory. These blood libels, occupation, ethnic cleansing, colonialism,
you think the settlements are not illegal?
and genocide are all part and parcel of the propaganda which I would like to be able to come on to, because all of the evidence goes in completely the opposite direction. In terms of Israel's compliance with the laws of armed conflict and its in the amount of steps that Israel takes, unprecedented in the history of armed conflict. And
actually, that's just a load of bullshit. I'm sorry, it just is.
Which other army?
It just is. Which other war in recent times have you had half the population is under 18 and you've killed 20,000 kids in
Those figures are Hamas figures that you are constantly
give me an example of where this morality has been played out elsewhere.
There were over 25,000 trucks of aid that were facilitated into the Gaza Strip by Israel. The estimates that I have seen is that should have been a stockpile of between 5 to 6 months of food and humanitarian assistance. Some estimates are in the region of 8 months. The reality here is that there is no Israeli-imposed starvation on the Gaza Strip.
When the Israeli government ordered 3 months ago a blockade of food and aid going into Gaza, that is a deliberate state-sponsored form of starving a populace.
No, it is not, because
that's exactly what happened. That's why they look like they're starving. That's why they're risking death
you've asked
to get to scrabbling bits of food.
That blockade, which was imposed in order to prevent Hamas continuing to fuel its war machine by selling additional aid that it was diverting, the fact of the matter is that this blockade was instituted in the context of that over 1,700,000 tons of aid which has been facilitated into the Gaza Strip.
I don't understand. If they're all so well nourished and Israel's behaved so impeccably properly in terms of supplying enough food for months on end, why do they all look like they're starving to death and are prepared to risk actually dying to get at food?
Which is Hamas propaganda, which you must accept is
it's actually footage. I'm watching news footage of thousands of people fighting with each other to get at food. Some of whom ended up dying, some of whom ended up being shot. The IDF says it wasn't them and it was Hamas. We don't know who did it because, as you know, the Israeli government has banned all international journalists from being anywhere near this to verify what is actually happening.
Piers Morgan, your assessment is being based on misinformation, like these false reports we've had today of Israel shooting 31 Palestinians attempting to get to food. And it was entirely false because it is, as has been the case previously.
The Israeli government says it was entirely false because journalists aren't allowed to verify this independently because Israel doesn't allow us in to do our job.
Israel is targeting Hamas and Palestinians.
Do you know how many children Israel's killed in the process?
There is a very simple explanation for the reason that we do not know.
Are you saying that the IDF only counts the bodies of terrorists it kills, not innocent children?
Has not been in control of any significant part of Gaza to be able to conduct that analysis.
So how do you know how many terrorists it's killing?
because it is striking them.
They'll sit here and say from the very beginning that the goal is just to get the hostages back and to defeat Hamas, while their finance minister is openly talking about how the goal is to cleanse the entire strip.
He's not even hiding it. He says it.
Yes.
He literally says it in front of the world.
Yes. And we see them now putting this into plans into action to do this. They've taken painstaking efforts to make sure that they limit the number of civilians that are killed, while also saying they have no idea how many civilians are being killed, and they don't count the number because that's not who they're targeting. You'll sit here and say we're only targeting Hamas, or that we're only intentionally targeting Hamas, and at the same time think about the argument they're even making, as Smotrich is out bragging about how not one grain of wheat will get into Gaza for this 3-month period that you're referring to, but they'll say, hey, look, they have stockpiles of aid that had gone in there previously. It's like, okay, Piers, so then logically, can't we deduce you're not starving Hamas? They've got plenty of food. Then who is the additional blockade supposed to impact? It's the civilian population. The level of human suffering that is being inflicted by Israel on the people of Gaza is evil. It is pure freaking evil.